TCU uses the bye week well. They land a 4-star wide receiver in Terry Shelton. Sonny Dykes continues to make waves in the 2025 class. And it's a game week. Arizona coming to town this weekend. Last game of the season at the Carter. We'll talk about it next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find us on your favorite podcast platform. We're going to talk some basketball today. Men and women in action this weekend. The men fell to Michigan on Friday. The women with a statement victory over number 13 NC State. So we'll discuss Mark Campbell's team. Also, TCU had a good day in the NFL. I wanted to highlight one player in particular, Quentin Johnston, who's playing well. It's game week. We got Arizona coming to town, 2 p.m. It's senior day. Last game at the Carter, we think there's a chance that TCU could play in the Fort Worth Bowl, the Armed Forces Bowl, which is in Fort Worth at Amon G. Carter. But most likely this is the last game at Amon G. Carter for this season. And we start with this. On Friday, I talked about TCU using the bye week well on the recruiting trail. On Monday, they landed Gil Jackson. Last Monday, I guess over the past weekend, they landed Gil Jackson, corner from Missouri City. He was committed to Texas Tech. They flip him. They did have a decommit, Chance Abels, wide receiver in the Metroplex. He was committed to TCU. He decommitted and committed to Arizona State. But they more than made up for it, at least on paper from a rankings perspective, as they landed 4-star talent Terry Shelton, who is currently, according to 247 Sports, the highest ranked commit out of the 25 that TCU has committed right now. He's from Ranch View in the Carrollton, Irving area, and is coming off a big senior season. Had over 600 yards in his junior year, went for over 1,000 yards his senior year. The thing about Terry that really stands out, and I broke down his game on Friday, but I'll do kind of a refresher today. He is your prototypical outside wide receiver build, 6'4", 200 pounds, can go up and get the ball. He does a nice job. I saw Michael Brawl pointed this out. Michael he's been on the show before. He covers the TCU and kind of does a podcast. I can't remember how much they actually record, but he's done some TCU things in the past. And he said he uses that big frame to box out smaller defenders and just go up and get the ball. He high points the ball. He plays basketball. You see that come out in his ability to just go up and get the football before anybody else has a chance to. Seems like he runs routes really crisply. He moves, fluidly. Had a kick return for a touchdown and one of the highlights from this year. So they use him on special teams. He's playing at the 4A level. So I would imagine most weeks Terry's facing much smaller DBs, and the coaching staff at Ranch View did a nice job of trying to create one-on-one situations for him where he could go up and get the ball. Obviously, big target in the red zone. They used him well. He runs well. I mean, it doesn't look like he's always sprinting because he just has those long strides that cover so much ground. But you see the ability to break tackles and get away from defenders. There was one particular play where he took just a little smoke screen, breaks 2 or 3 tackles, reverses field, takes it to the house. Big-time ability from Terry Shelton. And this is a great flip late in the process. He was committed to Arizona. He decommits. TCU had him on an official visit this past week, and they get that done. So awesome to have him in the fold and part of this 2025 class. He joins 2 other receivers, Ed Small, who had a really productive season at Anderson High School in Austin, I guess I should say. And they think Ed's a guy who could play for him really quickly. And also Dane Jones from Ridgepoint High School, who seems to project more as Small and Jones. I guess we'll see what they do with Jones. Small definitely looks like your slot wide receiver type of guy. Jones maybe has some position flex, with Terry definitely playing on the outside. One thing I pointed out on social media yesterday, Malcolm Kelly is a really underappreciated coach. I feel like he's been doing this for a long time, kind of quietly. And as TCU fans, we just become accustomed to it. But one thing that I was talking about last week, I really don't worry about this current coaching staff having quality players at wide receiver. Just every year, it seems like since Sonny's been here, they have guys that are expected to play well and that do so. And then they have other players who kind of come out of nowhere, and they've done it in the high school ranks. They've done it in the portal. But the steady presence there that I probably should have singled out more and highlighted more when I was discussing this is Malcolm Kelly. He was a holdover from the Gary Patterson staff. He flipped Quentin Johnson late in the process. Quentin was committed to Texas, playing down at Temple. His buddy Jared Wiley was going to Texas too. And the day before signing day, suddenly he decommits, TCU lands him. And QJ was one of those guys that almost immediately was a contributor in that COVID year. And then finally in year 3 in 2022, when they went on that great run, we saw him in his full form in an offense that really complemented what he likes to do, being a deep threat, being able to win one-on-one matchups, and he flourished that season. Savion Williams, same recruiting class as Quentin Johnston, was a great pickup out of Marshall, Texas, kind of an interesting guy, played quarterback at Marshall for a while, but had that size and frame that you want to see from somebody that's lining up on the outside, and has turned into a really great wide receiver. And then they've also found a way to use him within the offense in the running game, in the quick passing game. And I think that's going to help his draft stock immensely as he finishes up his career here in Fort Worth. That just ability to be, a multi-threat player at the receiver position. You're seeing that some with like Deebo Samuel in San Francisco, Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit. Whether it's jet sweeps or lining him up in the backfield, there's a lot of different ways that you can put Savion in the formation to isolate matchups the way you want them and allow him to use his athleticism to go and make plays. Jack Besh in the transfer portal has turned into an outstanding outside wide receiver. He was more of like an H-back tight end type at LSU. They tried that here. He dealt with some injuries. It didn't work. And then this offseason, they kind of quietly made the move to outside wide out, and he has thrived since the beginning of the season in the Stanford game. So Malcolm's done a really good job through the years of developing great players. And there's others, Jalen Rager, et cetera, but I'm not going to go through the whole list. Terry Shelton seems to fit that mold. And there's been some guys that have come through too. Jordan Hudson transferred after 1 year. That was kind of a miss, right? Cordell Russell transferred after 1 season, which was disappointing. They went and got Braylon James in the portal this offseason. Kyle Baker was part of the class in the transfer portal this past season. But this is a huge win on the recruiting trail late in the process. And it's just it's a great evaluation. Like, everybody that watches this kid play can tell that he is an immense talent and has the physical gifts that you want at that position. But a really good job seeing an opportunity to make something happen and getting it done. This jumped them up in the team rankings from number 24 to number 20. We'll see what happens between now and signing day. We're really close to early signing day. I think there's a chance, some of the big-time schools could land some more big fish, and maybe it gets bumped down a few spots. But at the very least, it feels like there's a great chance that TCU ends with a top 25 class, which is a big win for Sonny Dykes. Matt Jennings was talking to me a couple weeks ago, and we were discussing, like, how do we evaluate this team? It seems like they've improved, but there's still some things that are disappointing about this current group. And he asked the question, like, what does Sonny do well? And at the time, I didn't have a great answer, but the more I think about it, I feel like this is what he does well. Now, recruiting high school kids is one part of it. You actually have to develop them and put them on the field. To this point, we haven't seen that. We've seen it in some isolated cases. We haven't seen it, in full force. Hopefully next year, with all the offensive linemen they've committed to, with all the skill guys they've gone and got, we'll start to see the fruits of that labor play out on the field. But I think Sonny and this scouting department have done a really good job identifying talent, finding the guys they want, and especially in this class, going and getting guys that fit their system. Like, on defense, they've made a big push for edge rushers, and they got a guy like Chad Woodfork, who's, a top type of edge stand-up defensive end player in the country. Jared Martin from California. Keelan Abrams, a super productive guy out of DeSoto. And the list goes on of stud linebacker types that are uber athletic and can give tackles, offensive tackles fits by just using their athleticism to get to the ball. That's going to be a huge part of what they do moving forward. And then at the receiver position, with this particular class, they've once again done a nice job of finding guys who fit what they want to do and can go and make plays. Shelton's the number 12 ranked receiver in the country. So this is a blue chip type of guy. And he can go up and get the ball. He's got that breakaway speed to get yards after the catch. And if you isolate corners on him one-on-one, he has shown an ability to just punish them by using that big frame and that size to go up and make plays and make things happen. So they're losing a lot from this current group from a production standpoint of receivers. And J.P. Richardson's been super consistent for them the last few years. He'll be moving on. Savion Williams, they found a way to really unlock him this season. He's moving on. Same with Jack Bech. They found a way to get the most out of him this year. He'll be moving on to the NFL. So a lot of pressure on guys like Braylon James, Jordan Bailey, and some of these newcomers. Kyle Baker, who's going to be on campus for a year. Terry Shelton. Eric McAllister. I imagine they're going to go in the portal and try to find one or two more players who can be featured in the two deep so that they have a good feeling about what they're doing offensively. But there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for Terry Shelton to come in and assert himself immediately. And with that physicality and the gifts he has, I think there's a real shot for him to show like, hey, if I'm ready to play right away, you need to get me on the field because I can go make plays and make things happen for Josh Hoover. So just a really good recruiting flip for TCU late in the process here with the 2025 class. They have 25 commits. They're ranked 20th in the country. A lot of those guys playing in the playoffs right now. The quarterback, kind of the centerpiece of this, who they got late in the process after Ty Hawkins committed to SMU, Adam Schobel, who's playing at Columbus. And he's got to be excited today as playmakers like Terry Shelton are added to the fold and TCU continues to try to build the talent level at that spot. But again, Malcolm Kelly is outside wide receivers coach. You can almost guarantee like each and every year he's going to find a blue chip wideout who hopefully can contribute very soon and is going to be somebody who can go make plays for TCU. Big landing 4-star wide receiver, Terry Shelton, here a couple weeks before signing day. When we come back, TCU football is a game this week. We'll break that down next here in Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. One thing I didn't realize about children when I started having them, and we adopted our first two kids a little later in the process, so they weren't newborns. So I kind of skipped that phase initially. But one thing that nobody told me, even when they're 3, 4, 7, 8, they still go through phases where they wake up in the middle of the night. My daughter recently is just going through my 2-year-old still has nights where he wakes up in the middle of the night. And it's crazy how even just like a 30-minute interruption in your sleep pattern can really do a number on you the next day. I used to think when I was younger, I used to think that I could fight through that pretty well. I thought I had like a special ability to fight through that. But as I've gotten older, I was realizing, I just was young and didn't have much going on in my life at that time. So now I'm at a point where when that happens, I need to pick me up. I need something to help me get through the day, doing my podcast, doing my day job. And so 5-hour energy has become a good source of energy for me. It's what you need to help you get through that 2:30 feeling, as they used to say. And it's not just in convenience stores anymore. It's also online. So you can go make your own 12-pack. You can peruse through all the different flavors that they have. No matter what team you're rooting for, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're going through or what life stage you have in your life, everybody needs that extra pick-me-up from time to time. 5-hour energy. It's fan fuel. It's available on 5hourenergy.com. It's shipped nationwide. Check it out today. They have a limited edition Stan the Fan 5-hour energy 12-pack. It's available on 5hourenergy.com. And again, it's shipped nationwide. So Arizona this week, and this was one of the games before the year that I sort of circled or highlighted and thought, all right, week before the season ends, hopefully this has Big 12 championship implications. Arizona was ranked before the season. They were up there in the Big 12 preseason poll. Well, it's not gone to plan. In Brett Brennan's first year, he comes over from San Jose State after the former coach left late in the offseason to go to Washington. And even with a lot of returners, the two guys that were headliners this offseason, Noah Fafita and Taratua McMillan, Noah Fafita, the quarterback, McMillan, the wide receiver, they've had productive seasons. That's kind of the crazy thing about it. You think like, all right, this team's not living up to expectations. The dudes that you thought were going to be studs, maybe they haven't fit the billing. But Taratua McMillan has over 1,000 yards, 1,136 yards, 7 touchdowns. And he started the year with a bang, 300 yards against New Mexico, 304 to be exact. And he's tapered off some after that, obviously, but he still had big games. Had 138 against K-State, 161 against Texas Tech, 202 against West Virginia. But Arizona hit a 5-game losing streak in the middle of the season, culminated with just an embarrassing 56-12 loss to UCF. However, they did bounce back and beat Houston 27-3 on Saturday. And staying with the theme that the Big 12 makes no sense, and you never really know what you're going to get week to week, they came back and won convincingly against a Houston team that has been inconsistent, but has shown at times against Kansas, regrettably against TCU on the road, that they can be a competent football team. They won that game by a big margin. Their defense, Arizona's defense I'm talking about, has not been great, but they have had their moments where they've been solid. They're coming in 4-6. They still have a chance if they win their last 2 games to get to bowl eligibility. And so I think this is a dangerous team. And I'm glad that TCU's had 2 weeks to prepare. I think that should help. It seemed to really help them when they played Utah after that horrible loss to Houston. Offensively, they struggled, but defensively, I thought they had a great game plan against Isaac Wilson. Much bigger test for the defense this week. And we'll get more clarity on Marcus Deal and Hakeem Ajib-Elijah, the 2 defensive tackles that have been out for the past couple of weeks. Should get more clarity about them on Tuesday, maybe tonight at Sonny Dykes' radio show that he does at Real Head Barbecue with Brian Estridge. If they can find a way to slow down McMillan, I imagine Lamarian James is going to be the guy that gets the assignment for the majority of the time. Fafita's been under pressure a lot. So Devin Deal, potentially Cooper McDonald, this will be a good week for them to show out and get to the quarterback and make some things happen. This offense has been humming lately, ran into some red zone issues in Oklahoma State, but overall, I think they're playing really well. Hopefully that extra time to prepare gives them a chance to maybe reevaluate some things that they've been doing with the Savion Williams Wildcat package, because it was not as effective against Oklahoma State as it has been the past few weeks. Opportunity, though, to close it out at home and get a victory to get to 7-4 and give yourself a chance to get 8-4 with a win against Cincinnati. Frogs are 11-point favorites. And as much as Arizona struggled, I'm a little surprised it's that high given that the Cats are coming off a win. I saw Jason Shear, who covers Arizona for 247. He was like, man, that line seems crazy high for a TCU team that hasn't beaten a lot of teams by 11 points. And he listed off the teams that they've beaten by 11 points, which are Oklahoma State last week, Kansas, and then Long Island in their FCS game to start the season. But I think what it's showing is there's some respect from Vegas on what TCU has done lately. They've, won a few games in a row before losing to Baylor. And that Baylor loss, I hate losing to a rival. That was a winnable game. But Baylor's playing at a pretty high level right now. They beat West Virginia on the road. First time they've ever got a victory in Morgantown ever. I'm not excusing the loss. I'm just saying, I don't think losing to them on a last-second field goal is indicative that this team is trending in the wrong direction. I think they're trending upward as the season comes to an end. But big game against Arizona this week. We'll have a more in-depth preview as the week goes on. Let me know your thoughts about this matchup. 4-6 Wildcats coming into town this Saturday. We'll come back. TCU women's basketball. They made a statement on Sunday. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Thanks to FanDuel, one of our sponsors. I mentioned it in that segment. TCU 11-point favorites against Arizona. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app if you want to get in on that action. Create an account. You win your first $5 bet. You get $150 in bonus bets. Low investment for what could be a big return. Win one $5 bet. Get $150 in bonus bets. NFL, college football, college basketball, NBA, NHL. Fantastic time to be a sports fan. Fantastic time to get involved on FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. FanDuel is where the game starts. Also want to tell you about Gametime. I was checking out yesterday what tickets are looking like for this Arizona game. You can get them for as low as $45 at the Carter. Last chance to go see the Frogs in action at Amon G. So check out the Gametime app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions, as always, do apply. They tell you exactly what the fees are going to be up front, so you're not surprised at checkout. They show you a picture of what your view is going to be from your seat. Gametime, they make it easy for you. Best secondary ticketing app on the market. Check out the Gametime app today. Download it. Use that promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Your first purchase. Again, that's Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Before we get to basketball talk, one thing I want to point out from Sunday Night Football. I'm watching last night, Los Angeles Chargers, Harbaugh out there coaching up Justin Herbert and company. Quentin Johnston caught a touchdown pass, did a backflip in the end zone. Really happy for him. Rookie year was, there's no way around it. Looked like he might end up being a bust after that rookie season. But I think what we're seeing right now is a great example of guys can improve, right? Like, not everybody is a Pro Bowl type of player the minute they step on the field. And Quentin has found a role. The yardage numbers aren't eye-popping, but I think he has 6 touchdowns now this season, which is a really big improvement. It seems like he's found a way to thrive within this offense. He's got a great quarterback. Just super excited for him. I know he put in a lot of work this offseason to try to get to a place where he could do this. So kudos to him. Also, Josh Newton, Bengals corner. He got out there and played well. I saw a couple people that cover the Bengals say, man, I was super impressed with him. Maybe he earned himself a spot as a starter moving forward, or at least someone who should be rotating in and out more. So that was a great evaluation by the staff. He was on a Louisiana Monroe team that I believe lost every game one season when he was there. But he was effective. He played well, and he came in, and he was a great leader off the field, but also someone who just made plays on the field consistently. So congrats to him as well for having a good performance against the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. Darius Davis did his thing. All around, good night for TCU alums on that NBC broadcast yesterday evening. Basketball, let's talk about the team that won first. TCU women, they took on number 13 NC State on Sunday afternoon. They won 76-73. Sedona Prince, 31 points, 16 boards, 3 assists. Her best game since she got here in Fort Worth. She was super impressive. Last year, Sedona was great at times. She dealt with the injury. I wasn't always super impressed with her game. And I say this realizing a couple things. I know that the game is changing a lot. Basketball, right? People are shooting jumpers more. Everybody's shooting threes more. And I say this realizing that my favorite basketball player ever is Dirk Nowitzki, a man who was 7 feet tall, but lived his life outside the paint. He was shooting mid-range jumpers. He was shooting threes. He was working in the high post. I felt like there were times last season where Sedona was in love with her fadeaway jumper way too much, and she wasn't going to the rim and making things happen in the paint like she should. Yesterday, we saw the aggressiveness, and she still used that mid-range jumper as a weapon, and I think it can be a weapon, but I feel like your bread and butter has to be 2 feet in the paint, making things happen, working on the glass, and she did that really well against the Wolfpack on Sunday afternoon. Haley Van Lith looked impressive as well. Her playmaking has really stood out through the first couple games of the season. She had 18 points, 10 assists, and there was an interesting video that was shared across the women's basketball social media channels yesterday where she was talking to Mark Campbell, and she saw that she had a double-double with points and assists, and she got emotional about it. Like, she started crying. And in the moment, I was kind of like, man, that's interesting. But I think it's just obviously like these people, athletes in general, but these women are working really hard behind the scenes to make this a good year because it's their first real test. They thrived on a big stage. She had a great game. And for Haley personally, this is a sort of a redemption year. I mean, the LSU experiment did not go how she planned. And she took a lot of criticism for that. But she's in a system now where they're trying to highlight her ability to go get buckets, but also create opportunities for others. And she's doing that at a high level right now. Down the stretch, this looked like a team that was playing in their first big moment together. They have individual players that have played in big games, but that was the first like pressure situation they all encountered together. They went through a long stretch with about 5 minutes left where they could not score. And NC State was chipping away at this lead. It looked like with about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, they were going to win comfortably. They had a double-digit lead. Suddenly, everything kind of crashed in on them. I don't know why Mark Campbell didn't call a timeout at some point. And I saw this last year from him. He would let them play through these long stretches where it's like, you got to figure this out. And I get it. You want your team to figure it out. But also, I'm like, hey, maybe call a timeout, draw something up, do something. And he just wasn't doing it. He let him play through it. Now they ended up winning the game, but I thought he could have used, a break or two to discuss things with his team. Hopefully they grow as the year goes on, and that's something that gets better. Another player that impressed me just with what she does on the floor, Taylor Bigby, who came over from USC and was kind of under-heralded among the transfers because they had such a big transfer class. But she had a bucket at the end of the game to kind of seal the victory. She caught the ball at the 3-point line. Somebody came on a lazy closeout. She put the ball on the deck, got in the lane, and scored. And then she had like a one-handed rebound on the offensive glass where she pulled it down, kicked it to Madison Connor. Should have been an assist, but she missed the layup. And eventually Sedona got fouled on a rebound and got to go to the line. But she kept that possession alive by crashing the boards and making things happen. Played well defensively. I think that's the big difference. Like, you have the stars that have come in, but you also just have players like Bigby who can make plays and give you more depth than they had last season. So super excited for them. The men fell to Michigan. Ernest Uday was out, and they struggled in the paint. They also struggled to shoot. So they'll look to bounce back against Alcorn State tomorrow, but not great for Jamie Dixon. First real true test of the season. His squad comes up short. It was a competitive game for most of it. Michigan pulled away at the end. So we'll keep tabs on them as well. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Locked on Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcast.